On June 26, 2025, something quietly significant happened in West Africa without major headlines, without fanfare, and without political spectacle. In Burkina Faso's presidential palace, Captain Ibrahim Traoré received the diplomatic credentials of Leur Huberti, a respected envoy from Luxembourg. To most, it may have seemed like a routine diplomatic gesture, but for those closely watching Africa's geopolitical shifts, it signaled something deeper, a strategic decision that carried weight far beyond its modest appearance. As many Western powers step back from the cell, rethinking their roles and retrenching in the face of rising African autonomy, Luxembourg has done the opposite. Rather than send troops or attach conditions to its involvement, the small European country chose a different route, one of quiet, steady presence. Appointing Leur Huberti as ambassador extraordinary and plenipotentiary wasn't a random bureaucratic move. It was a message, not spoken loudly, but carried through consistent diplomacy. Luxembourg isn't walking away from Burkina Faso, it's leaning in. This relationship isn't new. In fact, it's been slowly building for decades. Far from the headlines, built not on control or strategic leverage, but mutual respect. While France and other former colonial powers face growing resistance across West Africa, Luxembourg has kept a low profile, earning trust through long-term partnerships rather than short-term political goals. That's what makes this diplomatic gesture so remarkable. It wasn't designed for applause. It was a continuation of a bond that's been nurtured in silence. Captain Traoré's government has been clear in rejecting traditional alliances that once defined West Africa's place in the global order. Burkina Faso today is asserting its right to forge a future on its own terms, prioritizing sovereignty, regional collaboration, and development models rooted in its own realities. Amid this shift, many Western actors have been sidelined, but Luxembourg remains welcome, not because of its power, but because of how it has chosen to engage. Its diplomacy isn't loud, it's enduring. Leur Huberti brings with her years of experience in complex environments and development cooperation. Her presence is not meant to instruct, but to understand, to listen, support, and reinforce a relationship that has weathered political changes. Her base might be in Dar es Salaam, but her focus is firmly planted in Burkina Faso. The mission is clear: remain engaged, strengthen bilateral trust, and continue a journey of cooperation that stretches back nearly 30 years. To understand how Luxembourg reached this rare position of trust in a region full of shifting alliances, we have to look back to the origins of its engagement. In 1996, Luxembourg began exploring its role in Burkina Faso's development. Just 2 years later, it officially designated the country as a priority partner, an unusual pairing on the surface, a global financial hub aligning itself with one of the world's poorest nations might have seemed improbable. But what emerged was a partnership built on consistency rather than headlines. Unlike traditional donors, Luxembourg didn't enter Burkina Faso with rigid agendas or expectations of political alignment. It offered technical expertise, financial support, and long-term cooperation designed around Burkina Faso's own priorities. Over the years, this resulted in a number of jointly developed programs, known as indicative cooperation programs, blueprints crafted through collaboration, updated regularly, and evaluated together. The third such program, ICP3, ran from 2016 to 2022 and committed over 120 million euros. What made this initiative exceptional wasn't just the scale of the funding, but the focus: education, health, digital transformation, inclusive finance, and employment. These were not donor-driven priorities, they were Burkina Faso's own goals. Supported by a partner who listened, that level of trust, built steadily over decades, has allowed Luxembourg to remain deeply engaged even as Burkina Faso undergoes political transformations. While some international partners pulled back during times of crisis or military transitions, Luxembourg stayed. It didn't try to steer the political direction, it simply adapted and continued its development work, signaling that its presence wasn't conditional on who was in charge. What sets Luxembourg apart isn't flashy projects or grand political statements. It's the way it works on the ground. In education, for example, Luxembourg has gone beyond building schools. It's helped shape national education policies, improve curriculum, train teachers, and strengthen systems that measure learning outcomes. It's not about donations, it's about durability. In digital infrastructure, it's supported foundational projects like modernizing land registry systems, helping rural communities and women gain legal access to land in a country where property disputes often fuel conflict. Even in emergencies, Luxembourg's approach is measured and effective. During COVID-19, during rising displacement crises, and in moments when the health system has been stretched by refugee flows, Luxembourg didn't parachute in foreign experts or drown communities in bureaucracy. It worked through local networks and regional organizations, focusing on speed, efficiency, and empowerment. This strategy, long-term development mixed with flexible, respectful crisis response, has helped Luxembourg maintain credibility at a time when many other donors are being questioned or rejected. It doesn't try to dominate the narrative, it invests in results. That's why when Laure Huberty arrived in 2025, she wasn't starting a new relationship. She was stepping into one that had already been carefully cultivated and maintained. Her role isn't just diplomatic, it's symbolic of something much larger: staying power. In a geopolitical landscape where every foreign presence is now scrutinized, Luxembourg is an outlier. It doesn't dictate terms, it aligns with needs. It's not interested in being seen, it's focused on being useful. That's a rare model in international relations, especially in post-colonial Africa, as Burkina Faso continues to redefine its role on the global stage, pushing back against external control and charting a more independent path. Luxembourg remains one of the few countries that hasn't had to justify its presence. It earned its seat at the table by showing up, sticking around, and staying quiet when others shouted. This is diplomacy based not on power, but on trust. And in today's Africa, that might just be the most powerful kind of diplomacy there is. Across Africa, especially in the Sahel, the winds of diplomacy are shifting rapidly. As some global powers pull back or face growing resistance, one tiny European nation is quietly doing the opposite. Luxembourg, often overlooked in broader geopolitical conversations, has managed to maintain and even deepen its presence in Burkina Faso, a country that has become a symbol of African defiance and sovereignty in recent years. What's more surprising is how it has achieved this while others, much larger and louder, have been pushed away. In development partnerships that often involve complex foreign expertise, Luxembourg makes a point to ensure local leadership is integrated at every level. Whether it's designing inclusive financial systems or digitizing public records, Burkinabe professionals are not only included, they lead. This approach isn't just symbolic, it builds long-term credibility. And now, with Ambassador Laure Huberty stepping into this evolving landscape, her mission isn't merely diplomatic. It's about reinforcing a partnership that has already proven itself capable of weathering political upheaval and ideological shifts. But the real question is, why is Luxembourg still welcome in a country that has openly rejected many of its traditional Western allies? As embassies scale back and development agencies face growing scrutiny, Luxembourg remains the exception. And that's no accident. It has avoided the pitfalls of dominance, ideological pressure, and conditional aid choices that have eroded trust in other nations' efforts. In the eyes of many in the region, Western intervention has often felt more like control than cooperation. Military actions under the guise of aid, rigid funding conditions, and paternalistic attitudes have left deep scars. Luxembourg, however, never tried to play the role of the regional power broker. It never positioned itself as a savior, nor did it tried to re-engineer Burkina Faso's political trajectory. Instead, it opted for something rare in international relations: humility. While others deployed rotating missions with grand strategies, Luxembourg sent small, consistent teams committed to collaboration. They worked quietly alongside their Burkinabe counterparts, respecting the country's governance even as it transitioned from civilian to military leadership. One of the most remarkable aspects of Luxembourg's approach is how it separates development from politics. While other nations suspend aid when a government changes or a coup occurs, Luxembourg focuses on the people, not the politics. If the work being done still serves the population, they continue quietly and steadily. This pragmatism has helped them stay in the picture when others have disappeared. Burkina Faso today is not just navigating development, it's redefining its place in the global order, from rejecting foreign military bases to renegotiating control over its natural resources. The country is asserting its sovereignty in ways that often put it at odds with foreign influence. And yet, Luxembourg has managed to remain welcome by doing one thing few others do: listening without trying to take control. Even the small details matter. While other diplomats issue stern statements or warnings, Luxembourg leads with actions. They show up in local meetings, they follow through on their commitments, they don't lecture, they participate, and that presence, consistent and respectful, is a form of diplomacy that holds real weight, especially in an era where foreign involvement is often met with suspicion. That Luxembourg also understands its own limitations. It doesn't try to dominate or shape African narratives, it contributes where it can, humbly and helpfully. That self-awareness builds trust. In fact, in many ways, its quiet presence has allowed it to do more than larger powers that often draw suspicion. It's not trying to lead Burkina Faso's transformation, it's trying to support it. So when Lur Huberti arrived in Ouagadougou, she stepped into a well-prepared space, one that Luxembourg had nurtured over decades. She wasn't there to introduce change, but to preserve and possibly strengthen a relationship that already carried deep roots. Her presence is a continuation, not a disruption. It's a sign that even in the age of upheaval, trust can still mean something in diplomacy. Still, the global climate is becoming more polarized. Burkina Faso is no longer just a development recipient, it's a rising symbol of resistance against the dominance of traditional global powers. The current leadership under Captain Ibrahim Traoré is not shy about challenging former colonial powers, criticizing Western media, and aligning with a broader Pan-African, anti-imperialist vision. It is building ties with countries like Russia and China, and increasingly calling out foreign manipulation of African futures. This creates a fragile space for any external partner. Luxembourg must constantly prove that it's not a tool of Western control, that its intentions are genuine and rooted in solidarity, not influence. One misplaced policy decision, one poorly worded statement, and years of trust could be undone in an instant. In today's world, especially in post-colonial African states, good intentions alone aren't enough. There must be political sensitivity, cultural humility, and an unwavering commitment to mutual respect. Huberti's assignment, then, is not just a diplomatic post. It's a test of whether honest cooperation can still thrive amid global suspicion and ideological battles. Every project she oversees, every forum she attends, must reflect Luxembourg's quiet pledge that it stands not for control, but for partnership, not for dominance, but for dignity. In this, Luxembourg's small size might actually be its greatest advantage. It doesn't have a military agenda to defend. It doesn't carry a colonial legacy to justify. It doesn't ask for political allegiance in exchange for support. Its credibility comes from the fact that it has never pretended to be anything more than a willing partner. But that credibility will now be tested in new ways. In today's geopolitical landscape, even aid is politicized. Infrastructure, data, systems, financial tools, these have become new arenas of influence. And Burkina Faso's government is watching closely. Every foreign action is evaluated through the lens of sovereignty and self-determination. For Luxembourg to remain relevant, it must stick to what it does best: stay small, stay sincere, and stay focused on the people. It must ensure its programs speak to Burkina Faso's needs, not the preferences of donor nations. And most importantly, it must resist being absorbed into broader Western strategies that could tarnish its image of neutrality. This isn't an easy task, but it's a meaningful one. If Luxembourg succeeds, it could offer the world a new blueprint for international partnerships, one not built on power, but on respect. For Burkina Faso, this relationship is more than development aid. It's a rare example that not every outside actor is here to dominate. Some are here to stand alongside. Ambassador Huberti's role is far more than symbolic. It's a reminder that diplomacy still has space for sincerity, that in a world of pressure and performance, quiet consistency still matters. And if she fulfills that mission, the benefit won't just be for Luxembourg. It will be a victory for a continent demanding to be seen, not managed, and for African nations seeking partnerships based on trust, not control. Do you believe Luxembourg's approach will endure? Can such a small country maintain relevance in the face of rising global competition? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to explore more untold stories about African power, pride, and history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon. At this channel, we're committed to sharing what others ignore: the real legacy of Black civilization, culture, and identity. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay aware, stay empowered.